what's up? It's Paul from Guitar World, and here I am with Jared Dines. And if you don't know who he is, well then, can't help
If you don't know
now.
who he is.
Yeah, well. But anyway, this is the best part of what I do is I get to not play guitar.
Oh, okay. All the pressure's on me.
And I get to ask some really cool questions that I think a lot of people would be interested to hear what Jared has to say about. So with that, I'm going to start with the first one, which is, what is the first riff you've ever learned?
So the first riff, it's been so long, I'm not entirely sure I remember, but I do remember there was a POD riff. The song was called Messenger. Oh. And it started with this little... You know, it was like, it took me so long to do just that, but I was a huge POD fan, huge Van Halen fan. I actually would try to learn as many easy Van Halen songs or Rush Boston songs when I first started, like just the easiest parts, or I'd listen to a song and be like, okay, this 30 seconds I can play. I want to try and learn this one. But I think the very, very first one was POD Messenger, because I remember getting the MX tabs and sitting there in my kitchen and just like, okay, what does that little X mean? And, you know, trying to figure it all out, but yeah.
So not Here Comes the Boom, we just started with that.
Yeah, I learned that one too. I learned that one too, yeah. Classic POD.
Which is funny because
POD.
like you went for your riff is like you're starting with more of that like a multi-string riff,
yes.
as opposed to, you would think the way to play when you're learning a riff, it's more that straight up kind of riff.
Chords were very hard for me, but for some reason the chords were just as hard as individual notes, because I was so just like, I try to play and just hit so many different strings, but for some reason using my fingers, which even to this day sometimes if I'm just noodling, it's just much easier for me in my brain for some reason to be able to do that. I'm not sure. It's weird that way, I guess.
So with that, what is your favorite riff of all time?
Oh man, I hate questions like this. There's so many good riffs, but I would say of all time, probably like Lenny Kravitz. That riff right there, Always on the Run.
That's a good
When I
riff.
heard that riff, I was like, I'd listen to that song 1,000 times. That or probably what is the song called?
Audio Slave.
Audio Slave.
Yeah.
Show Me How to Live.
Show Me How to Live.
That riff, for some reason, those two riffs, since I was a kid, they never leave my head. I don't know why.
To me, like what a good riff is, it's sort of like when you hear it, you automatically like, wow, that's just sounds so great. But what makes it even more special as a guitar player, how it feels under your fingers. Yes.
And it doesn't need to be technical. It doesn't need to be something crazy. Like sometimes the easier riffs are the best riffs.
Yeah.
Because you'll go away with it in your head just forever. Like I have had riffs in my head for years, and there's no rhyme or reason why. It's just how it is, I guess. I don't know. So probably one of those two, I would say.
It's funny. It's like so you're like, there's certainly a certain decade where you
yes.
like that is your wheelhouse.
Yes. So
right?
So my dad was huge into Rush, huge into Boston, Journey, Foreigner, all those bands, AC/DC.
That's my
yeah.
decade,
So when I was first starting, he would just show me all this music. He had a buddy who burnt me a bunch of CDs. You remember that? Where you burn CDs, mix CDs. I had like 12, and they had Jefferson Starship on it, Journey, everything, Disturbed, everything that was guitar driven, because he knew I was into guitar. And so a lot of it was Rush and classic music. And I just, for some reason, the melodies in the songs, the soul in them, it has always stuck with me.
That's great.
Yeah.
So speaking with that, is there a riff that you feel is underrated?
Oh, that's a tough question. It's hard for me to think like what's underrated. I would say probably like a Styx riff or something. That one riff, or that Miss America riff. Yeah.
That's a real deep track.
Yeah. And I see again, it's so easy. It's so easy. but it's been in my head for so long. And I don't know if it's underrated, but to me, it's like I never see other people playing it. I never see people talking about it.
You're the first
so.
person I've ever seen play that.
Really? Yeah. Okay. So
honestly,
yeah, Styx had some sick riffs for
amazing.
sure.
So at what point did you actually stop like learning all these riffs and start really doing what you were known to do? Was there like a transitional point? Right
so
there?
for the first probably, I started when I was 13. And then probably by the time I was 17 to 18 is when I joined my first band. I would play in the worship group, you know, back when I was younger and stuff like that. And I don't really consider like a band, but it was definitely beneficial for helping me to play with musicians and grow. I would say my sound came from when I was in a band and I actually had to sit down and write.
Yeah.
You know, I would come up with things and I would write little licks or whatever, but writing songs where I actually had to structure things and think, okay, this is my sound. How do I want to sound? And back then, you know, you're not as mature of a musician. You don't know as much, maybe depending on how much of a prodigy you are. But for me, it was very difficult to kind of create my own sound. It took me a few years because I would listen to bands like Killswitch Engage, you know, metal bands, you know, Breaking Benjamin and As I Lay Dying, bands like that. And I'd be like, man, that sounds really cool. But then I'd also have that 80s rock influence or that 70s like folk influence, which I feel that honestly up until recently, I'm in a group called Daddy Rock. We just put out a record, and that really showcases, I think, what my sound is, because it is modern. It's very modern, almost metalcore kind of metal sound, but there's a lot of shred in it. There's a lot of like, you know, pentatonic licks and 80s licks and stuff like that. So I think my sound is very much a mixture of the newer modern with the old 80s, and it's taken me 15 years to really kind of, okay, this is kind of what it is.
For me, I've always said that my advice to musicians is I always said, you know, one of the things is if you're trying to get better at it, is always surround yourself with guys who are way better than you, because all you're doing is playing catch up to play at their level.
Of course.
And it seems like you kind of writing the music that you did, you need that.
It was beneficial for me because I took lessons for a couple years to learn basic notation and stuff like that. Chris Lund, shout out if you ever see this, you're a legend. And he would tell me, play with older musicians. And that was something that he instilled in me. And I was like, well, that's not really cool though. I'm a young hip kid, right? But it's true though. Older musicians that are more mature in their style and their sound can teach you so much in rhythm and melody and all that kind of stuff that, like I said before, unless you're a prodigy, a lot of the younger, you know, kids that they don't quite have yet. So yeah.
And one of the most important things that most people is space.
Space.
Which is really important.
Dynamics.
Because your inclination as a young player is just
to shred.
Keep going.
Go as hard and fast as you can. Space is very important.
So let me ask you this. Show us something that I think that most people or most of your fan base and viewers wouldn't expect you to play. Like, do you have something that you...
Honestly, I don't think most of my viewers are aware that I'm such a classic rock fan. So I would say it would be anything like, you know... Leonard Skinner, you know, Styx, the riff I played earlier. It's kind of funny because my audience is very new modern metal driven and a lot of older style as well. But I don't really advertise too much that's my root. You know, like I talk about, I like these metal bands. I never really talk about the classic rock bands. So I would say it would be anything from like, you know, Leonard Skinner to I don't know, I'm trying to Foreigner, just some band like that, some old school classic riff probably.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. That's a tough question.
Well, let me make it easier. How about, do you have a favorite chord?
A favorite chord?
Something that you would, what do you wake up to?
There's one chord that has been stuck in my head. Or wait. Let's go to D. So there's this, I wrote this song, and it had this chord in it. And for some reason, I love chords with that dissonance. But it just, it works for some weird reason in my head. It's just really pretty. I don't know. Any chord that has a type of dissonance like that.
That's cool. But you
or
also...
I like those extended chords. don't know what you would. I don't even know what you would call these type of chords, but
Yeah, name escapes me, but yeah.
stuff like that. Pretty chords.
But
I
you
guess.
definitely like sort of that cascading sort of
Yes.
type of deal.
Yes.
Which
absolutely.
which really adds to it.
Absolutely. Again, more simplistic, but I'm kind of a simple player. Like I don't muddy up or try to like show off or impress my skill. It's like, for me, it's always been very much play what fits. Play what gives you the emotion you're looking for. If you're looking to be a little sad or hopeful or angry, just play just enough to get that emotion across and let the other musicians kind of, do their thing. But yeah, as my favorite chord, any chord with that like type of dissonance to it, I've always been a huge fan.
Do you have like a warm-up routine in order to get what you do?
I honestly do not. When I sit down and play the guitar, I mean, I used to, sure. I'd run like major scales or minor scales. I would just go back and forth, up and down the scale, which is kind of your typical thing, right? But lately, in the past 5 or 10 years even, I would say when I sit down and pick up a guitar, I just noodle. Like, and that's another question I get a lot on my YouTube channel where people say, well, how do you write the riffs that you do? And I would literally just sit down and grab my guitar and be like, I'm in a mood to write. I don't really know kind of what exactly, but I'll have an idea in my head of the style or the sound I want to go for. So say I want to be metalcore or something like that.
Sure.
I like a lot of octave riffs, I guess you would call it. We do stuff like that. So I would literally just sit down and just start playing. And then when a riff came to me, I'd be like, all right, let's record this, let's put it to a song. I probably should have a practice routine that I do, but honestly, for the last, like I said, 5 or 10 years, I really haven't.
But when you do, when you're coming up with that kind of stuff, how much does theory factor into as you're winging it? Let's just say.
Basic theory, I would say. I'm not a scholar of music by any sense of the word. I know your basic major minor scale, your basic natural harmonic minor or whatever. So I usually stick to that kind of start or that kind of jumping off point, I guess.
That's
but yeah, I go by ear a lot. If it sounds cool, it might not even make sense. There's a lot of riffs out there that's like that is just chromatic or whatever, or things that it doesn't make sense musically, but it fits a mood.
Yes.
So when I do stuff, I usually just try to go for a mood or a vibe more so than like, does this musically make sense?
Yeah, but I like that. See, I think I like when I hear that. It sounds aggressive, and it also sounds like you're just going for something.
Sure.
It automatically
well, when you're
strikes
playing
you.
that kind of style, I mean, most people don't know what it just sounds like noise to most people anyway, so it's like, well, whatever. Screw it, right?
That's right. So do you have is there something that you've written so far that a certain part that you're really proud of at this point?
Really proud of? I don't think I've written a riff that I'm super proud. I mean, there's one. I could play it for you here. And it's not hard. Most people could play that riff. And again, going back to me, I like the octave kind of sounding stuff, right?
But that sounds it's cool. It's so musical.
Yeah, right. Well, it's like it was one of the first songs that I wrote in my band. It was the first song that I wrote in my band, and I literally was just sitting there, and I was like, "All right, you're on stage. There's people in the crowd. What do you play?" And I was like, "Let's just do some cool like kind of riff that people can start vibing a little bit, But yeah, as far as greatest riff, I don't think I've written it yet. I don't know. I think it's coming. It's coming.
So I'm going to give you a couple of last few questions.
Sure.
Because I know you got to catch a flight.
Yes.
And but I'm going to ask you one more guitar question.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future in like just guitar, whether playing or maybe gear or things like that? What do you foresee? What if you had a crystal ball here?
Polyphia. Honestly, I see the future of guitar, I think, is fusion.
Fusion.
I think it's fusion.
You mean of styles?
Yes, okay. Fusion of styles, yes. There's a lot of new artists that I'm recently discovering give a couple shout outs. Tim Henson from Polyphia, he's great. Manuel Fernandez, he's great. And Ichikanito. People like that, I think they're really turning heads in the industry because they're not just doing a typical, they're actually like doing stuff that's
Trailblazing.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say fusion and collaboration.
Yeah.
I think is going to be the future because I mean we're going to get to a point, right, where it's like everything's been heard. So it's going to be who is doing something fresh or who's doing something just with a slight edge or who's doing really cool music with other people. At least personally.
Got it.
Being on YouTube, that's the kind of vibe I get. It might be different in the real world, but yeah, that's how I would see it. Yeah.
So what is just let me get into the soul of Jared Dine. What is the hardest part of what you do? Like in doing what you do, is it the creative bit or is it the back end stuff? Like creating like your brand, say. What is there something that kind of weighs you down?
I think personally, and maybe for a lot of other artists out there, it's doubting myself. I think a lot of times I'll write something, I'll record something, and I just delete it because I'm like, this is dumb, this is stupid, no one's gonna like this. Being able to turn that off and just write what I want to play, what I want to write, what I want to showcase, without the fear of rejection, essentially. That's probably one of the hardest parts for me as an artist, is just being comfortable in my skin to play and write what I want to write, and pretty much just being like, yo, this is me. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, But because I've tried to like emulate other styles or other players or be like, oh, this is popping right now, I should do more of this kind of thing or whatever. But it's like at the end of the day, that all falls apart because it's not me. And if you're trying to do something that's not you, it's not really gonna work.
Yep.
But yeah, I would say self-doubt is a big one. And then just as far as physically, I would say theory. I need to learn more theory and improvisation. Those are two things I really need to that kind of hold me back, I think, as a musician. Yeah.
Cool. Last couple questions. I'm going to get a little James Lipton on you.
Okay.
Tubes or digital?
Nowadays, okay, I think that tubes will always have that sound, right? If you do not have a nice studio with nice mics, a great cab, and a great head, digital will sound better. That's what I think. Because for me, in my house, I have this tiny little room, doesn't sound good at all. I've mic'd up like a really good amp with a really good mic and stuff like that, and then I've done the digital, VST.
Yep.
And unless you have the proper gear to really grab the tube sound, digital is just it's easier for the laptop producer, right? It's easier for the guitarist in his bedroom, and it's gonna sound better unless you go to a big studio. So I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I think both have their benefits and they both. Yeah, exactly. Being a classic guy, I'm always gonna advocate for tube, but.
Sure.
In the changing age, I give it 5 or 10 years before tubes might be obsolete.
Yeah.
I mean, with the stuff that's coming out nowadays,
It's very good. It's very good.
yeah, STL, it's tonality stuff. It's crazy. It sounds so good, and they have, you pop it up and there's a noise gate, there's an EQ, there's everything you would ever need. It comes with delay and reverb, and it's all in this little $70 package.
Yep.
Come on, like it's hard to really be like, but. Yeah.
So, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you at the pearly gates?
You did well, son.
And that's
you
all
did
we can
well.
ask. Okay, last but not least, I like to call this the struggle is real. I thought about this the other night.
Okay.
I like the struggle is real, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I know you're really fast.
Oh no.
But really, how fast are you?
Oh no.
How fast are you? Because here we go. Think you can do this? Can we get a timer on this?
Okay.
Because
All
this
right.
is, I mean, this is to me, the struggle is real every
okay.
time.
Okay, no, this
Every
is great.
time.
This is great. What do you know your time?
I don't know my time yet. I haven't, I've gotten it out in less than 5 seconds, and then I've spent 2 minutes on it.
Okay, all right. Well,
Unless you have some sort of,
so the
method.
tip, I think the method here is to properly balance the pick, and then you just gotta be quick.
God damn, that was good.
Then you just gotta be quick. So I'll try one more time. Here, that was pretty easy though, because it did drop right down in there.
That was pretty
I'll
good.
shake it up a little bit here. So
Very good.
we got it in there, right?
Yeah, okay.
All right. So let's see.
There's
It's in the back.
there's the heave ho.
Oh, there we go. Oh, boom.
All right.
I see, that's, okay, I gotta be honest, though,
might
I've
be a
done a
record.
skit on this before,
Oh.
so I kind of had some practice
So I didn't
on how
know.
to get it
I didn't know,
out.
but that's pretty amazing. That's
There you
pretty
go.
amazing.
There you go.
Well, there you go. Jared Dines, everyone. Thank you, Jared, for coming here and
Thank
sharing
you.
your time,
Thank
man.
you.
This is awesome.
And thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it.